person, then you start to be good for things, you know? You can fix problems. You can handle a funeral. You can handle a difficult situation, you know? And so it's not only that it's psychologically meaningful to pursue the highest of goals and the development of your character, but it's also the best possible thing that you can do practically here and now in the material world to make it less terrible than it might otherwise be.
Are your personal goals always going to be aligned with the needs of society, the needs of humanity?
Well, that's a trick. You know, it's optimally the answer is yes. And you can think about it like a musical score. You know how there's levels in a musical score. Each instrument is doing its own thing. Each section is doing its own thing, but it's all united into a single vision. And that's the right, this is another reason why critics of the hierarchical structure are wrong, because the proper way to set up a hierarchy is so that your interests are aligned with those of your family. That's hard. That requires a lot of negotiation. And then you and your family have your interests aligned with those of your local community, right? So that all of those levels are reinforcing each other. And then those are united at the higher level, at the higher political structure. And that's an equilibrated state, to use a phrase from the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget. It's a game that everyone wants to play, and it's working for everyone at the same time. And so it isn't based on oppression or dominance from the top down. And so I think that if you formulate your character properly and you put yourself together, you start also to realize that you're not. Look, if you get married to someone, the idea is that you become one, right? And so it isn't just your interest anymore. Or maybe it's that your interest isn't your interest without it also being someone else's interest, right? It's insufficiently formulated. And you need that conflict with that other person to tap you into proper shape. So what you're aiming at is you and the development of your character, but more than that. And then you do the same when you introduce children into that. You expand out that characterological capacity. And then you can continue to expand that. And so optimally, yes, what serves you should be serving at every level. And I believe that part of the reason that music has such an overwhelming effect on people is because that's what it says. It says, look, everything can work in a multi-level harmony. And then people listen to music and music produces a religious-like experience in everyone, right? It transfixes them with the sense of intrinsic meaning. It's really miraculous that it does that. And the question is why? And I've puzzled over this for years. And it seems to me that the reason is that in a musical piece, everything has its proper place at every level. And so that speaks of, well, it speaks of heaven. That's the right way to put it, which is why music is so often used in churches. But it means that everyone's interests are being taken into account. You know, and it's a utopian ideal, and it's something that has to be constantly worked on. But see, people often have accused me of an individualistic bias in my moral reasoning, you know, that, well, you should get yourself together. It's like Ayn Rand. It's like, no, it's not it. You get yourself together so that you can get your family together, so you can get your community together, so that you can get the world together. All of that at the same time. There's nothing selfish about that, except the responsibility, which is on you to start that and to bear that and to lift that and to act it out. So it has nothing to do with chasing your short-term, impulsive, pleasure-seeking goals.
Which is the real epiphany for me, because you'll know that you're doing the right thing for your personal growth when it's the same thing that society needs from you. When your needs align with what society needs you to do for it, then you're doing the right thing probably for yourself.
Well, that's how it seems. I mean, it seems then like you found your niche, right? It's where you and what you have to offer fit. And, you know, I think of people as beasts of burden in some sense. Like we're built for a burden, and we're not happy without that burden, and we want to find the one that suits us. And that's difficult. It's part of the adventure of life to seek out the burden that suits you. But when you have that, then yes, then hopefully you're operating in harmony with the requirements of those around you. And the thing to me is that everything else pales in comparison to that. That's why it says in the New Testament that you should stack up riches in heaven. It's like there isn't anything better than that. You know, you're functioning well, your family's functioning well, you're contributing to your community. What you're doing is worthwhile, you know? You're not tormented by your conscience. You're aiming at something that the sacrifices that you have to make that clearly justify the sacrifices you have to make. Maybe even the sacrifice of your life, because you're in this, like this is a mortal game. You're in this with your whole life. And you'd think that what that would mean, at least in part, is that you need to find a game to play that's of sufficient grandeur and nobility so that perhaps even the fact that mortality is built into the structure now becomes justifiable. I mean, it's a hell of an ambition, but it doesn't seem to me to be something that's impossible. I think you can live your life enough so that it justifies itself despite its limitation. That's the real question. Can you do that? And I believe that you can, and I believe that what that means is that the human spirit fundamentally triumphs over death. And so that's optimism, you know, in the midst of the sorrow and the malevolence. We have the capacity, sorry.
Don't be sorry.
We have the capacity to transcend that. And there isn't anything more optimistic than that. And there's nothing in it that isn't good, right? It's good for you. It's good for the people you love. It's good for the broader society. It's like it's good. And that'll take you through your times of travail. There isn't anything else that will. And then maybe on your deathbed, you can think, I justified my privilege, the terrible privilege of my existence. And maybe that's good enough. It's possible that that's good enough. You certainly don't have anything better to do than that, as far as I can tell.
We all got to find our burden. Dr. Pearson, I appreciate your passion for this.